I am your host, Beth Clarity Lewis. I'm the founder of Verve Counseling, the founder of Long Live Lively, and the founder of this podcast. Welcome to the Verve Counseling podcast, titled This Won't Be Done by 5, which gives a nod to the human condition, which simply holds no deadlines. I'm just going to stop there. We are recording season 3, episode 4, and today I am sitting down with one of our incredible Verve counseling therapists, Casey LeRay, who's recently become certified in ART, Accelerated Resolution Therapy. We're diving into what ART is, why it works so quickly, and how it's helping clients heal in powerful new ways. Let's get into it. Welcome to season 3, episode 4 of our Verve podcast, titled This Won't Be Done by 5, which gives a nod to the human condition, which simply holds no deadlines. With that, today I'm super excited because we're talking to our very own Casey LeRay. She is a therapist on our team at Verve Counseling, and she has recently been certified in something she's really excited about called Accelerated Resolution Therapy, which is acronym to ART. Casey, take it from there. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned and what excites you about ART.
I am officially not certified yet.
Okay.
I'm trained.
Okay.
Have to
Gotcha.
take another class, another 3-day training to get
Okay.
certified, but I am trained in it.
Okay.
And accelerated resolution therapy, it kind of has some similarities to EMDR in the fact that you're doing eye movements. One of the main differences is with EMDR, you do 2 fingers. With ART, or accelerated resolution therapy, you do the whole hand and you're doing the eye movements. And it's for generalized everything. It could be anywhere from anxiety, depression, a trauma, something that's happened, anything like that, that is part of what makes ART really unique. It can have positive effects as soon as after the first session.
That's awesome. And explain to me, and I'm probably a perfect person to explain this to because I really know very minimal about it. So to keep it all real simple for my simple noggin, and that is, what is the difference? What's happening to one's brain when 2 fingers or a whole hand? What's going on with that eye movement? What's happening inside our heads when that goes?
That is the $1 million question, because what's happening is whenever you are using your eye movements, it is pulling things from the back of your brain that you have kind of stored there, which could also be trauma. It could be anxiety. It can be depression. Whatever negative sensations you have back there, when you're doing the eye movements, you're giving cues or clues like focus on the event as to why you're here today. Whenever I did it on the death of my dad. So I focused on the first scene, which was kind of all the things leading up to his death. And so it was real dark. And so when you're doing the eye movements, you're pulling those images from the back of your brain that you have stored as negative images. And so with that, moving the eyes is the way it works with the hippocampus and the amygdala. They kind of work together and they're pulling things. And the imagery is what helps you recreate, because that's ultimately what art is the accelerated resolution helps create a new image so that you still have the imagery, but you don't have the pain that goes with it when you think about it.
That's so cool. I can
It's
see how
very
that would
cool.
be very helpful, especially to someone like myself who's very visual. I'm a very visual person, and I think a lot of people are. If I remember correctly, that I've heard that that's actually the first thing that most people are, is visual, but I've certainly met my share of people who aren't visual, but I can see how that would be very helpful.
And what's the other cool thing is that I really like is whenever you are thinking about a traumatic event, especially like when I did it, I don't have to share it and relive that event with a therapist. It's all in my head, and I'm just replaying it in my head. So I'm not speaking it and saying it and hearing it and just reliving that trauma. It's
Oh,
all in my head. And so it was to the point that as soon as I mentioned talking about my dad and what was going on, I was bawling, crying. My lips were quivering to the end where I'm sitting there with a super cheesy smile, just smiling with tears. And
that's awesome.
so you could see the transformation in that 45-minute window of start to finish.
So you're not, I didn't catch that. That's really interesting. So you're not saying it out loud. You're
Mhm.
100% in your head, just creating the storyline and visualizing. So no one really even knows what the trauma is.
And it's up to you as the client to share. Like I shared what I felt comfortable sharing. And it after each segment of eye movements, the therapist will ask, so what would you like to share? And as a client, you have the right to say, I don't want to share anything.
Wow.
And so that's the really cool part I like about it, because several of my clients that I think would be a perfect candidate for this, a lot of them don't want to relive that trauma verbally and just want to internalize it, but they can internalize it and have the imagery in their head without speaking it and hearing it.
So how do you, and Jason, to jump in because I'll
Hmm.
keep
Oh
talking
yeah, for sure.
when I can. How do you give, if you can, and maybe you don't know this yet, but how does a person who, let's just use something awful. They're all, and awful is relative, so I shouldn't have said that, but let's just say I have a memory of being really abused, physically abused by a parent or something. That is not true about me, but let's say that that is my story. And how does one change that visualization to something positive or productive?
And that's where you get creative. We
Okay.
have so we have scene 1 and scene 2. And so this first scene is always the hardest because that's the actual trauma that has happened. But then scene 2, it's almost like you are stepping out of the intense lens of your trauma and stepping back to see, like, for example, for me with my dad, the first scene, all I saw was death. I saw him so sick, all the things. The
Yeah.
second scene, I stepped back and I saw the hospice nurse helping. I saw the paramedics helping. I saw all the help and not the trauma and the death. It was just really weird. And so when I stepped back, I was able, the next part of it is where you do a director's scene and you get to reimagine or recreate this imagery. So for me, I knew my dad was going to die. I couldn't recreate that and that he wasn't going to die. So instead, I got to actually sit and talk to him and have that closure and recreate that. So for someone who has been sexually abused, maybe they were a good father or a good mother before, and then they've turned, maybe to drugs or alcohol, and then became a sexual predator for a child. But then that child or that client could sit there and process in that director scene of, oh my goodness, what if we had this conversation and we were on the same level and we could talk about the drugs and talk about the alcohol and not necessarily change it to where it didn't happen, but have a conversation as to why that parent did what they did in that time, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And does, it's not the same thing as forgiveness. It's not,
No.
forgiveness isn't in there. It's not about accepting or being okay with. It's about truly rewriting, like
And
almost
that's their
wiping the slate
theme. Keep
clean.
the knowledge, lose the pain. So you still have it there, but you've recreated it in your brain by pulling all those negative images and just recreating it. So now, like before, if anyone knew me, I couldn't talk about my dad's death. Like I would just get, my tears would just start flowing, and it's been almost 5 years. And now I can talk about it freely. Like I finished the session and I called my mom immediately and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so good. I have closure with my dad dying. Like, and she's like, okay, like, are you sure? Like, what? I
That's
mean, it's been 5 years. Like,
wonderful.
what are you doing?
That's wonderful. I
It's
love that.
really, really neat the way all the parts work. And one thing about it is it's very scripted. So there's not a lot of conversation happening. It's not like a normal talk therapy. It's very scripted, it's very structured. Um, so if a client wants to come in and have a conversation about it, it would be a follow-up conversation. It would be a follow-up therapy session, because in that moment we would come in with what our trauma is or what our anxiety is, because they also have things that were in the past that you're trying to heal from, and then we have the everyday issues that we're dealing with. So if someone has work stress or, conflict with a coworker, there's also a script for that to help you deal with everyday stressors.
How do you keep, I feel like, because I know I am skeptical about a lot of things. I'm skeptical, funny enough, I'm skeptical about a lot of things therapy. But I feel like, how do you keep the skepticism? Perhaps the skepticism is, oh, really? One or two sessions and we're
That
good.
was me.
How do you keep that skepticism at bay? And how do you keep the client, what makes the client have long-term ongoing success after one or two sessions? Is there any slip back or backslide after a couple of sessions and 6 months rolls around and they're like, well, here I am back where I was before those? Does
And
that happen?
triggers can happen. But the video that we saw of a client was a postal worker. She had been mauled by a dog on her delivery. And for, I think it was 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, she couldn't go back to work. Just the thought of it caused stressors, caused anxiety, caused all the things. And so she did the accelerated resolution therapy, and they followed up with her a week later, and she was driving the route, wasn't doing the actual delivery. She was driving the route with no anxiety, no stress, no like, oh my goodness, what if this dog? Because then it became she didn't even like dogs. Then she couldn't go
Yeah.
outside. She didn't even want like anything to do with anything nature, anything. And she was a runner, did
Mhm.
marathons, all the things. So she was a very outdoors person. And this incident truly like destroyed her. And so she was like, I just want my life back. Like, I want to be able to work. I want to be able to go outside and run again. I want to
Sure.
like dogs again, because I have triggers, small dogs, big dogs, whatever it is. She did the therapy. After one session, they followed up with her a week later. She was in the postal truck driving the route, and she was like, I feel like I'm ready. And so her supervisor put her through the ultimate test and brought her to a vet clinic with dogs. And she was like, I walked in and I was able to pet all the dogs, big, little, all of them, cats too. And then within a year later, she was completely out of any anxiety or stress and was doing her route. She said after 2 weeks from when they videoed her, she was on her full route with no flashbacks or anything from the incident. She said,
That's
I used
spectacular.
to be scared to walk up to houses, scared a dog because the dog came through the door and like a screen door. And so she was like, ever since my therapy doing that session, like I'm good.
That's spectacular.
And that was
And
just one
she's
session.
Yeah, one session. She said she was running. She was back in the woods doing her marathons. I think at that point she was training for a marathon because it had been a year. And so she was like, I'm good. And she goes, I really had my doubts. She was like, I was sitting there thinking, yeah, sure. Okay, this is going to work. She did a bunch of talk therapy. And she was like, and you could see through the process, through the videoing of her doing the session, it was, I felt it because she was crying, just talking about it, bringing it up. Her lips were quivering. Like she was sitting there and she was just like reliving it, traumatized her. But then after the first scene and then the second scene, she was like, well, it's like my body's there, but I'm not. And she goes, I could see I'm getting attacked, but it's not me. Like I'm an outsider looking in at this attack. And so just hearing her talk about it, and she was just sitting there kind of like, I, I can't believe the relief I feel. And so one of the things is after the session to kind of let your brain, because of using the rapid eye movements, it causes you to really get tired. And
Mhm.
so that night after I did it, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was truly exhausted because of using the eye movements and pulling things from your brain and whatnot. And so she was not allowed to talk about it. So that's why they waited a day or two or a week to go back and talk to her. And because they ask you to give your brain about 6 hours to kind of download what the process was and what you went through, and then a follow up. And so when she did her follow up a year later, she was on her route. Just it was almost to the point we were watching and we were like, "Girl, shut up!" You were just like, I mean, she was just like, "Oh my gosh!" And I'm doing this, and I'm doing, and we're like, "Okay, like we get the point. Like you're good." But yeah,
That's awesome. So the therapist is doing this hand thing. Your
mm-hmm.
eyes are following the hand, so going back
Mm-hmm.
and forth. At the same time, you're visualizing the trauma. That sounds like a workout for sure.
It is a good workout for your arm.
I just think, well, no, I think of myself. I think if I remember stuff or I want to visualize stuff, I close my eyes. And often you can tell when someone's visual because they look away and they're,
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about something while they're looking up there, which I do regularly. So I feel like that focus on that hand, well, would be a challenge.
And
Would be.
one of the trainers there that was with us, she specialized in working with emergency uh, people. So
Mm-hmm.
paramedics, police, fire,
First
all those
responders.
ones
Yeah.
that have true trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, now it's to the point that I've worked with so many of them that they're just like, hey, go do that thing you do. Whatever it is to help get rid of those nightmares we're having, go do that thing. Like, go do your magic. And she's like, it's not magic. You're doing it. I'm
Yeah.
just guiding
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. That's spectacular.
In
Go ahead.
in EMDR, I know there's different ways to do the bilateral stimulation in the eye movement. Is there? You mentioned that like the whole hand in ART is necessary or is used typically. Um, do you does ART specifically use that, or I've seen like a light board that goes back and forth. During the pandemic, I saw that they modified it to where a client can like sit like this and tap. It might not be as effective as the eye movement, but were there are there other methods for you to do the eye movement in case your hand got tired or something like you wouldn't maybe didn't have access to someone following your hand back and forth.
Well, and that was one of the questions because several of the therapists that were in this training, they do virtual only. And so there are other options, like they apparently have a ball that moves virtually that is a simulation of the hand movement in your face. And the tapping is strictly like an EMDR thing. We do
Okay.
not do the tapping with the ART. And so the tapping is strictly for that, but they do have other simulations that you could use. They said that at times they've told them like because it's like shoulder width apart, and so they'll tell their clients, okay, put like a sticker on the wall and then follow my hand, but look, kind of like put your computer high enough that you can follow my hand
Right.
and see the width of it depending on how their computer set up. If they're doing it from a phone, it just depends. But there are options, preferably any that I do, provided that I can, I would rather do in person just because you are very up close and personal.
Yeah.
We would joke and we'd be like, okay, if I sit in your lap, I'm sorry, but here we go, because we were so close to the client and the therapist when we did our roles.
Mm-hmm. Are there some people? I hear you say that this is for any any traumas, any things, any um, um, uncomfortable ways of living life. Are there certain people though that aren't going to be the best candidates for this? What about the person who isn't that visual? What about the person who says, I mean, I've had clients before who say, I cannot picture things happening. Like I can't, I
And
don't.
that's where we try to help them. Like we
Okay.
will try to say, well, like what would a good day look like for you? Like, for example, they talked about eating disorders. And there was a kid that did her ART on eating disorders. And so it was like, what would a normal day look like as far as with the eating disorder? And then let's look at it from another lens. And so eating disorders, phobias, things like that. They did one on spiders with the phobias and showing that the eye movements for whatever reason, like what is your biggest fear? And they were like spiders. These people, which I still am like, nope, we're petting a tarantula. and
Oh,
just like, oh, look, tap,
that's
tap.
too much.
Exactly. But they were like, look at me. Like, I was just scared to come in the room in a cage locked up. And they are like, here we are petting this tarantula, like tap, 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 pet, pet.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. But it
No
it
need.
it works. So I mean, there's a long variety of lists of people that it works for. Does it work for 100% of the people? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the ones that,
Sure.
have success, have huge successes.
Mhm.
And so that's what makes it so cool and unique, is
Yeah.
because a lot of times people don't want to talk about it and relive that trauma and hear it. So that's what makes it really cool, because it's their whole image that they're creating.
Yeah, I was curious about what happens if you run into like a resistant client or someone who isn't fully bought into it, because I feel like it seems like what you might have to do with a client is say like, hey, can I try something? Can you humor me for a bit and we talk about this, and I'll do, like, it's going to be weird, but trust me. What happens when a client is skeptical? Is there like, do they
And
have to be fully bought into the
Well,
idea
and I don't
before they
think
go into it?
fully bought in, but like the way I've approached my clients is, hey, listen, there's this really cool training that I've been trained in, and it worked for me. And I'll tell a little bit, disclose a little bit. Like, I couldn't talk about my dad's death. It was kind of traumatic, even though it was an 8-month process. We knew it was coming, but I can talk about it now. And so I think also kind of building that relationship and that rapport, because I personally don't know that I would start off right out the gate if Beth walked in my office for the first time and say, hi, I'm Beth. And I said, hi, I'm Casey. And I'm like, why are you here? Okay, let's do this therapy.
Yeah.
Like, I would kind of build that relationship, just like with EMDR. The first time a client comes in, unless they specify, you're not going to say, okay, let's try this new therapy and let's see if it works. I think it's just kind of knowing your clientele and knowing what could or couldn't work for them. I currently have a client who has anxiety. And so when I was speaking to them this week, one of my conversations was, hey, there's this really cool training that I've done. It's non-invasive. It's nothing, super crazy. It's just with eye movements. And so as soon as we got off of our session, I got a text saying, what's the name of it again? And I'm sure they're looking it up and trying to do a little bit of research to see, but they were like, I would be cool with that. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to hurt anything, will it? And I
Yeah.
was like, no.
Right. Right. That's cool, Casey. I'm really glad that you did that. And I was super excited I kind of pulled from your excitement. You called me after your first night of training, and it was infectious. Like, you just were really excited.
And you
And I
actually
love
thought
that.
I was being sarcastic in a
Yeah,
way.
I did. I was like, you being sarcastic? Are you for real? Because you said, I love this training. I'm like, okay. But thank you for sharing it with us. I like that your current clients that you've had several sessions with, are interested in climbing on board and saying, yeah, let's give it a try. I think that's really great. And if anybody listening is interested in this, or if any of it resonates with you, by all means, go to vervwell.org. You can read about it further there. You can certainly contact Casey through email or getting her phone number on our website. You can even schedule with her directly. I think if you're going to go this ART route, am I correct in thinking that if someone's interested in this ART route, are you saying that you would rather see them kind of in a talk therapy setting for a while before you just jump in with ART? Or
You could do it either way, but I think kind of going back with what Jason said, kind of, if a client comes in, they're kind of, if they've never done therapy before, because it's not traditional therapy.
right.
There's less talking and you're doing more work
Mm-hmm.
mentally and in your head. So it's not a traditional therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where I think just knowing your client a little bit, maybe one session, and then saying, okay, like, I think you would be a good candidate. I think this could work. I think this could help you. Because you just never know. And
Yeah.
so I think ideally, but other therapists in the ART training were like, sometimes we just jump right in. Just
Okay.
like if it's a emergency responder,
Right.
they have a lot of trauma, so they want to not relive that, not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, if we know that that's what their background is, that's more than likely what they're coming to me for, we're jumping right in.
Yeah.
And it might be about 60 minutes or it could be 70 minutes, just depending on how much the client cares to share. So, but it's the same cost as a regular therapy session.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us today on This Won't Be Done by 5, a Verve podcast. Stay wild, stay well, and stay in therapy. All right, y'all.
Yay.
That's that.
Alrighty.
Out. Thanks for listening. If ART sparked something for you or you want to learn more, please visit us and all things Vervewell at vervewell.org. Feel free to contact Casey LeRay directly at casey@vervewell.org. And as always, stay wild, stay well, and stay in therapy.